So SCPS earns 0.5 unweighted FTE for each full-time student in each of the two counts, for a total of 1 unweighted FTE for the year for each full-time student. The unweighted FTE for each student is multiplied by a weight based upon the program they are in, with higher cost programs having higher weights, such as ESE or career ed. So the basic funding allocation starts with the unweighted FTE. It's multiplied times the program weight, which gives you a weighted FTE. That weighted FTE is multiplied times the base student allocation, which is the $5,594.30 in this year, and that gives you the base funding. And that's done by student and overall for the district that way. So in addition to that, in addition to the base funding, there are various categorical funds, each with unique funding criteria. Included in this category would be funds for student transportation and safe schools. Also, the Family Empowerment Scholarships are also similarly funded. They are through the FEFP, with the FT and funding being included in the school district's funding calculations, with the total estimated scholarship payments withheld by the state. So they do show up in our calculations as if they were Seminole County, but we know they're not. And so, but we have to back those out. The state doesn't give us any money for that.
Mr. Pavlicek?
Yes.
Could I just ask a question, please?
Sure.
You mentioned the required local effort, the RLE. Could you please explain the situation with the RLE over the last couple of years in terms of how it's applied?
So over the last 10 years, that funding has dropped by about 40%. The state determines that millage each year, and cities and counties typically keep their millage the same. The state has been dropping ours over the last 10 years. It's dropped by about 40%. It was in the 5 range 10 years ago. It is now just over 3 mills. That's about $115 million that we would have received if they had left that flat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
And if I may, that will, depending on what county you live in and what property values are, it will be different county to county.
Yeah, but the base student allocation is the same for every district. If you have higher tax value in your district, more of your base student allocation comes from your property taxes, okay, and less from the state. If you have a low tax base, you'll get more state funding.
All right, but there's a range of total per student. So, for instance, the Keys has a much higher.
Oh, right, yes.
Right.
Yeah, the cap is 90%. You can't fund more than 90% from the local property taxes. Then that would drop their millage a little bit, right, so that they wouldn't be spending more than 90% of their funding from the power local effort would be capped at 90% local property taxes. The rest would be state.
Thank you.
Here. If no further questions, we'll proceed to discussing fiscal year 25-26. So the fiscal year 25-26 revenue and expenditure budgets were based on an initial Department of Education projection of $60,599. The revised 25-26 FTE is now projected to be 60,002, or 597 less than the original projection. So a mid-year revenue reduction of $3.9 million was primarily due to this additional reduction, partially offset by a $1.9 million in budget adjustments. So just to explain what's been going on a little bit here, due to the impact of the change in the scholarship law, along with the demographic changes experienced by Seminole County, SCPS has been experiencing a decrease in enrollments in each subsequent year since that law changed. The beginning estimated FEFP funding for each year is based upon the Department of Education's student FTE projections. These projections are done each spring for the following year. These projections for the last few years have not anticipated the extent of the reductions realized by SCPS. Since school educational programs make up a majority of the operating budget, Once the school year has begun, some adjustments to school staffing can be made due to the reduced students, but no major adjustments may be made without significant negative impacts on the school program, essentially. So any questions on that? So each year, their projections have showed us a reduction in FTE. It's come in worse than that every year since that law changed. That's pretty much what's been happening. So the net $4.7 million.
Stop, Chair.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I think, Chair. Okay.
Okay. The net $4.7 million recurring deficit for this year, which you see up here on the slide on the far right side, where it says net income in parentheses deficit, is $4.7 million. It's partially offset by non-recurring prior year Department of Education revenue adjustments of $2.4 million. So those are one-time adjustments from the prior year. However, we still have a recurring budget deficit for this year of about $4.7 million. That's where we're ending the year. Those adjustments help maintain the fund balance, but as you can see, it's still dropping by about $2.3 million from where we began the year. So each of the last couple of years, we've seen a drop in fund balance. This year wasn't quite as bad, since we had initially projected, the state had initially projected a 1,300 FTE drop. It actually came in at about 1,900. So the 597 is an addition to the initial estimate of 1,301 as compared with last year. So between years, we lost projected to lose 1,900 FTE.
Okay, so I have a couple questions, but anyone else first?
Go ahead.
So you mentioned that the FTE dropped by a particular number during the school year. So the projection was greater than what actually came through. So we've hired the teachers.
Right.
What do we do then?
Well, that's the problem. We can make some adjustments. Remember, we have to plan for the next year in the spring. Our fiscal year starts July 1, and then we don't know what's going to happen until the school starts. So they do try to adjust the staffing as much as they can. Usually, there's not a lot of adjustments that can be made without disrupting the school operations, because of the fact that the teachers are appointed for a year, and there may be some vacancies where they can do some shifting, but nothing dramatic.
And if I may, Chair, we got to a point where we did try and do the switching of teachers to places where students showed up and we needed more teachers between our schools.
Right.
But we got to a place where we could not do that anymore without, A, disrupting the education of the students at the school, and B, without having some contractual issues. And so essentially, there are a number of schools this year that were left overstaffed for the year. And that's part of the deficit situation that we're discussing.
Right. And so just to clarify, we still have a deficit for this year.
Yeah, that is where we're projected to end the year, with a $4.7 million recurring deficit.
Okay. Ms. Sanchez?
And to go a little bit more on what Superintendent Beeman was saying, at the beginning, when we received our FTE count, and we knew that we were under enrolled, or should I say, that we didn't have as many students as we were hoping to have, but we had the staff. We decided not to disrupt, and we were told by you that we were going to keep our staff because we didn't want them to lose their jobs like other counties did, and said that we may have to make adjustments next year, but we're not going to make adjustments this year. So we didn't have any disturbance with any of our classrooms or teachers or staff.
Did not have any mid-year layoffs.
Thank you.
My question is, since they're doing a not great job at estimating our enrollment, are we mandated to accept that number?
Yes, we are mandated to accept whatever number they come up with, and unless we have a very good reason, they generally don't allow us to question the number. Pretty much, if we have questioned the number, and they've ignored us, pretty much.
Okay.
Past, so. Okay, so we'll now look at this next, the next fiscal year and our planning for that. So, as you can see there, well, each arm of the Florida legislature has proposed an FEFP formula for 26-27. Of course, they have not finalized anything, and I understand they may not be back in session even, so they are required to have a state budget by July 1. We don't know what that's going to be, but since the Senate's plan closely correlates with our current year state funding increase, we are using that plan as our preliminary budget analysis. That plan, as you can see up here, includes a 1.9% increase in revenue per FTE and a decrease of 1,999 student FTE. That, again, is based upon the Florida Department of Education's beginning 26-27 FTE projection for SCPS. That's official. That is what's in the Senate's funding calculation. That will be the number used in the final calculation approved by the legislature when they do come out with a budget. This results in an estimated FEFP funding reduction for SCPS of $7.7 million for 26-27 in state funding, as you can see there. On the right side, there's a preliminary estimate 26-27. You've got revised 25-26, and as you can see, there's state FEFP, and then add local taxes, and then you have the total budget there, $527.3 million, a reduction from last year of $7.7 million. So there is some other slight adjustment, $1 million. That's where we're dropping the transfer from capital a little bit, but we're also picking up some additional cuts in the transportation budget that Dr. Mullins has proposed to offset that. So prior to any budget adjustments, the projected deficit for 26-27 was $26.4 million, which in determining how we came up with that, it would include the prior year carryover deficit, $4.7 million, the revenue reduction of $8.7 million, as you can see up there, and the preliminary fiscal year 26-27 cost increases ballparked at around $1,300 based upon prior experience. That number is in flux. We are working on what that number actually is, but we feel like that's probably in the ballpark of what we're going to experience in the new year. The question would be, what is that? That would include health insurance, SRO cost increases, utility cost increases, property casualty cost increases, transportation fuel and parts increases would be a substantial portion of what would be there, but we are in April, so we're still working on what those numbers look like for next year. So, but we believe that's probably in the ballpark of where we're going to be. So $23.4 million in savings initiatives are proposed to cover this projected deficit, resulting in a preliminary net recurring deficit of approximately $3 million. And if you will look at the chart, if you go down to net income deficit, there's $2,975,000 essentially there, which is about $3 million. So that is our recurring deficit. So that is the amount that really needs to be made up to have a completely balanced budget. We are offsetting that with a one-time transfer from the Print Solutions Fund, which had some surplus there, and that will help maintain our fund balance at an adequate level. And so that is how we derive that number essentially. So those savings.
Double check,
yes.
I think Ms. Sanchez has a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Sanchez.
So when I asked, I guess last month in the board book review about how much money, revenue we received from the print shop, and that money, that extra funding that we received, that they make extra, is what you rolled over into this so we could offset that.
That's exactly right. They've been accumulating a balance.
I just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that for people to
that-
understand that
That is
it's a
correct.
revenue making
It's a one-time, and they do
Correct.
generate revenue each year. It isn't that amount, just so you know. It's smaller than that, but they
Right.
have generated surpluses over the years, and that allows us to do this.
Perfect. Did you all get a copy of that? The revenue cost?
Yes.
Okay. I don't
Yes.
know if everybody, okay, thank you.
Yes. So I have a question too then. So, let me make sure I say it correctly. So, despite the efficiencies that we're planning moving forward, we already anticipate that we will have a deficit of around $3 million, right,
correct.
a recurring deficit.
With everything that we've done, we're still at that point, yes.
Right. And so we will possibly we will be using our fund balance to resolve that deficit
That
if
is correct.
necessary.
If we don't make that up.
If we
The
don't.
fund balance will be dropping again by another $2 million.
Right, okay. And then I have another question. Back when you talked about going with the Senate proposed plan of 1.9%, my understanding from last year's budget was that the increase was 1.9%.
That's correct. That's why we're using that number. We're not expecting it to be any better than that.
Right.
Because of that reason.
So that already resulted in underfunding in some areas. Well, maybe not what you would call underfunding, but maybe perhaps in some categoricals that did not adequately fund what the programs were that we're engaged in, like you mentioned.
That's true. That is
Right.
absolutely true.
So that was
Right.
likely to continue.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So the $23.4 million in savings initiatives include the following budget savings initiatives. Instructional and support staff are being reduced to align with enrollment trends totaling $16.6 million, including 205 eliminated positions, which includes certain vacant or reclassified positions. So it's not all just eliminated. Some are being moved to special funding that would be authorized for that. District-level department staffing and budgets, including certain vendor contracts, are being reduced totaling $6.8 million, including 76 eliminated positions, which includes certain vacant or reclassified positions also. So staffing changes will be managed through attrition or reassignment to minimize disruptions to the extent practicable.
Yes.
Further budget savings initiatives are needed to cover that anticipated remaining potential $3 million deficit. So just as a follow-up to that analysis, where we are, the state is projecting state revenue shortfalls over the next few years, and it is anticipated that SCPS enrollments will continue to decline based upon our demographics and the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, resulting in additional SCPS budget deficits going forward. Due to budget uncertainties related to FTE projections or other mid-year unexpected events, an adequate fund balance is critical as a financial buffer. Unless budget reductions are made going forward as needed, it would take potentially no longer than 3 years for the unassigned fund balance to revenue ratio to fall below the minimum threshold in law, which under certain conditions would result in the Department of Education taking over the operation of the school system.
Excuse me, Mr. Pavlicek, has that occurred anywhere in the state of Florida?
Yes, currently that has happened to 2 districts. Union and Glades are both in an emergency situation where the Department of Education is going to be supervising their operations.
All right, thank you.
So that means when they go under, what was the percent again?
Well, if it drops to 3%, you have to
3%.
notify the state. If it drops to 2, then you have real trouble.
Then you
They're-
take over.
They're going to then start
Thank you.
getting
And
with
2
you.
so far have had that situation.
2, yes, ma'am, currently.
Thank you.
Currently, yeah.
Currently, yes, we haven't had a session yet for any budget yet, so we don't know anything else yet.
I was just saying historically, there have been some, this is just the current situation.
This is the current,
Correct.
right now,
Right.
those 2.
We don't know what's going to change yet.
Okay, so due to the need for further budget reductions, various budget areas will be reviewed for potential cuts, including travel budgets, overall about $3.9 million spent last year, and various substitute budgets with about $6 million spent last year. Potential reductions in substitute costs could be realized through the monitoring of the activities for which a substitute would be needed.
and board members, I'll jump in here because I know that you have quite a bit of feedback from the community about the heads-up email that was sent to our high school principals regarding out-of-state travel. And our high school principals are well aware of the financial challenges that we are facing. But to be, clear, the out-of-state travel information was related to employee out-of-state travel as well as student out-of-state travel. So when we're talking employee, think out-of-state conferences and so forth. And, quite frankly, even this year, as a team, we have been scrutinizing the out-of-state travel of our employees in an effort to kind of bring down the cost already. And so I wanted to share with you that Mr. Pavlicek, shared that even with all of the, teamwork and the reductions that we have planned, the position eliminations, the contract reductions, all of those things, we still have a $3 million deficit that we have to adjust for. And so I know that when looking at individual situations at individual schools, there's a belief that there's not an impact to the general fund for travel. And for some individual cases at schools, that may well be the case. But there is a travel budget for the district as a whole collectively that can help us if we reduce it in addressing this situation that we're in. I would tell you that potentially, even just thinking about when there's travel and instructional personnel are out of the classroom, that is an impact that is felt by the district because, by and large, the district pays for all of the substitutes throughout the county when there is an absence. That being said, I've had many days to review a number of the emails from the parents and the students regarding specific out-of-state travel situations for our students. And I shared with the parents and the students that I would have this conversation with you all today. Our policies state that out-of-state travel, not routine, and is something that must be based on special circumstances. Policies also state that out-of-state travel fundraising doesn't begin until the school board has approved a specific out-of-state or international trip. However, what is clear from the emails that we've received, and I'll just say particularly from the students that have sent some emails to me about the Oviedo volleyball player trip, is that the students believe that they have been fundraising for this trip for some time. And so they don't see it as a trip that hasn't been approved. They see it as an opportunity lost. And as a parent, I would just say that hurts my heart. I get it. I'm a baseball mom. My son is probably leaving right now to head to his very last baseball game of his high school career. And I'm going to hope that they win it, so then maybe I'll have a chance to see him on Thursday. But in the event he doesn't, it's it. This is it. And I know what it means for our kids. And so what I have said to the parents and to some of the students is that I would reconsider the request. But with the permission of the board, I'd ask that you allow me to relax the policies that would allow me to have the schools, when they're making those requests, demonstrate that the fundraising would cover the opportunity for the kids, no matter if the kid can afford it individually or not, and could cover the request for the instructional personnel when they're out of the classroom. And I would then reconsider the out-of-state trips for 26, 27 with those considerations in mind.
So, Ms. Beeman, is that something we can do by consensus, or does that come to us as an action item?
You could, and here's where it would essentially, what it would mean. There may be some trips, some out-of-state trips that come to you a little later than
Right.
they typically would for approval, because I'm going to be asking the schools to demonstrate before I put them to you on the board agenda that they can cover all of those costs.
Right.
And so at the time that I put them on the board agenda, if it doesn't come within a time frame that it typically does, I would ask for leniency at that point,
Right.
and I would ask for an opportunity to work with the principals to have them understand what this process adjustment would mean
Right.
for when they're making those requests.
Right, understand. Board members, any
I
questions?
would make a motion.
Couple
I
questions
think
first.
I would like to speak if I could just a moment. Oh, Member Vice Chair,
question
you're
first?
first, I think.
Well, is that all right?
Yes, you're in
Yes,
the
thank you.
roll call.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. These are some very, very tough circumstances we find ourselves in. And I know that as all of us being parents, educators, being deeply invested in our students in this community, we want to be able to continue to expand opportunities that we have for our students, not limit them. So I appreciate hearing that there's a way to offset possibly through fundraisers the fiscal impact, the direct fiscal impact it has to the district. I'm also curious if there are, certainly there are opportunity gains for the students, going out of state, having these extra chances to travel and all of the additional perks that come with that. But are there any other than substitutes, are there any other fiscal or other sort of concerns that we need to address within the district? For instance, opportunity losses. I mean, if a team is gone for 4 or 5 days and it's a teacher that in addition to being a sponsor for a certain club or whatever, also is teaching a very rigorous class, or a class that has intensive studies where a student needs, direct one-on-one specific instruction to make sure that they reach their gains. How are we capturing those? Are there any other, not necessarily dollar for dollar impacts, but other impacts that might be like soft costs? Are we thinking about that?
Well, and I'll share with you that many of our coaches teach very, very rigorous courses. I mean, that happens. And typically, what I understand from is that they leave very detailed plans, lesson plans, so that the learning can continue. Are there some educational losses for the students that are not, on the trip with the coach? Probably over time when we have, more days out of the classroom. Educational time out of the classroom, whether it's the students or the teachers, I think has an impact. And it is, I think, in most cases here in Seminole County, mitigated by our coaches and teachers by leaving kind of detailed opportunities while they're away. And I think that is happening.
Thank you. And I trusted that was happening because we have exceptional educator professionals. Just wanted to hear it directly from you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Member Krause?
Thank you so much. Superintendent, one of the things that I'm concerned with is that each sponsor of either a club, a sport, or whatever is following exact processes with facility rentals. If they're using our property, how do we, the policy doesn't specify that. It's assumed by us, and I think that maybe we need to relook at that policy and include some of those things, that everything goes through Facilitron, if they're fundraising through our buildings. Just, you know, I know our bands do that. We've heard about their summer camps and so forth. And so I just want to make sure that we are following the letters of what we intend for all of the cost. I also had a question about the overall liability. How is that paid? Is that paid through fundraising? Do we figure out a portion of that? Because even if we have parents sign waivers, I guess there's the risk that we could still be litigated against.
I'll give you the kind of the answer that the policy has, and then I'll let Carlene give you the real answer.
Okay.
But our policy provides that if there are additional insurance needs or safety and security needs that are needed for when students travel out of state or internationally, that has to be addressed with our risk management department at least 21 days before a trip happens, and that the cost of that should be borne by the school program that is doing the traveling. Now, I'll tell you, I'll allow Ms. Cole-Palmer to share about the liability situation.
Well, the liability remains the same, and we have to make sure that we are covered for that liability ultimately, because ultimately it's the school board that has approved that travel. I know that the risk management department makes every effort to assist the schools with making sure the coverage is there, and if additional coverage is needed, it's sought if known ahead of time. So that's always critical.
And does that happen through the Facilitron process, or how?
In some aspects it does, and some
Okay.
it does not, from my understanding.
Okay, so we need to be consistent with that as well.
I think that there are opportunities for us to improve our Facilitron practices, and I will tell you that as a team, there are opportunities for us to really cover the cost that is being borne by the district, by any renter, by increasing our rates, because right now, the rates do not fully cover the cost that the district is kind of experiencing based on a number of the facility rentals.
Well, Board, it would be my preference that we proceed with allowing certainly the Oviedo trip. Not that we have a say, you know, we're giving you the leeway to make the call, but there are other opportunities. I've heard from a DECA teacher that they have the opportunity to send some students out of state. There's so many, Odyssey of the Mind, and some of the marching bands and so forth. So I'm hopeful that we can look through this, and I will just add personally, I believe that the experiences our students have here in a public school are what bring them to public schools, is that there are more opportunities than they would have otherwise. So that's my take on it. Thank you so much. I will be supporting this effort.
Ms.
First of all,
Sanchez.
thank you all so much for taking the time to clarify some of the questions that I've had, and I believe in full transparency. And I feel a lot of this could have been eliminated if we gave the reasons why, instead of a blank statement and said they were denied. And as a classroom teacher, as a parent, when our children get in trouble, the first thing we tell them or explain to them, do you know why you're in trouble? Do you know why you're grounded? I mean, not everybody grounds their kids, but I did. So I would always do the whys, and the same thing as a classroom teacher. And, you know, it's our job to do our due diligence and make sure that we are making sure that everything is covered and that we follow the proper protocol. And like Member Krause said, experiences are what make our kids well-rounded. It makes their experiences through school, everything well worth what they're doing in whatever activity, sport, or so on and so forth. And they don't remember the worksheets they did, and none of us do either. We remember those wonderful experiences that we had going places and seeing things and bringing it to life. Along that line, with that, I know I really would love to have a deep dive workshop on this and really drill down on this, because even in the board book this month, we have, and this, because of our new software update, we don't have pages, so it's a little frustrating. It was harder for us to locate and navigate through the board book, not like usual, so it's nobody's fault. It just happens to be an issue with the software that didn't pick up page numbers. But there was one field trip, and it says no fiscal impact, and that's where so many people have been so confused, even me, because no fiscal impact means that I assumed that means not even substitutes. And so now we're looking at the large number of substitutes where we have, you know, over $4.8 million worth of substitutes. And that's not, you know, that's a large number. That can include long-term subs. That can include teachers on leave. It covers a wide variety of subs. So I want people to understand that that's not just teachers or employees that are taking time to go on a field trip with a student or anything like that. So I want to make sure that people understand that. But, and also, Superintendent Beeman, you made a really good point when you said about our rental costs for facilities and our facilitron. Even our facilities that are rented during the weekend, our gas costs have gone up, our propane, diesel, everything has gone up. So keeping that AC on in the weekends, and you know, we cut back during the week, during the summer, and where we go on a 4-day week,
Yeah,
correct?
and the weekend. I was here on Sunday.
Correct.
There was nowhere.
It's hot, exactly. So we do what we can to make sure that we are trying to cut the cost.
Yes.
And we don't have the building, you know, all in AC. And so it's important that we do revisit and look over all this, because I think that the anxiety levels, not just from a student's perspective, but adults as well, has been through the roof. And it's really hard for a child to stay focused, and as well as employees to stay focused when they have something that they've been told has been sitting around and has not been approved, or something may have happened, and they didn't get any feedback, and then we're told, and then they're sitting there advocating for themselves and speaking up, and they don't know. So I think all of us are going to do a better job making sure that, you know, we do a better job on hearing them and listening to them, because I'll tell you, they were amazing with their emails and their conversations. Those kiddos, I mean, I'm exceptionally proud of them, as well as the parents, but especially our children, for advocating for themselves, because that's what we want them to become, lifelong learners, and to speak up when they feel that there's something that's wrong, that we need to look and navigate. And that's where I feel that deep dive is really important, because I would love to see a breakdown, a line item of how many are taking for long-term leaves, how many are broken for just a one-day sub compared to, you know, maternity leave. So those are things that I don't expect overnight, because believe me, Dr. Dellinger and I have spent many days in Tallahassee throughout the years, and see that we haven't even set a special session yet on knowing what our budget's going to be. So all of us are on high alert right now, not knowing what we're going to have. And I do truly appreciate the fact that we were able to keep those faculty members on staff where other districts were not. You gave us heads up last year. You said, hey, I'm letting you know, we are overemployed with a lower number of students, under-enrolled, but we're not going to do that to our families, our students, or our teachers right now. But be prepared, because there may be changes. So I just want to make sure people hear that. For anybody that's listening in that couldn't be here at the meeting, the people that are here, those conversations have been discussed, and you know, we don't want to be those other counties that have to be taken over by the state, and we are fiscally conservative in this county. This building is very old, but we've made it do, and we've done an excellent job with that, and thank you, Dr. Mullins, for making sure of that as well.
Any other? Ms. Davis?
I guess my question is more logistical as far as what type of application and information is going to be exchanged between an instructor, for example, and the district, as far as the criteria that they need to prove to show that fiscally the trip is, majority or mostly all is going to be covered by the students themselves through fundraising or whatever. What are the criteria that you're going to consider in those applications? And how do, how do they show it? Because, everybody needs to be on the same page as far as planning purposes. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, and they're in their mid-30s now, about the fifth grade trip to DC. It was something that they looked forward to from second grade. And, I hate to see these traditional trips fall through the cracks because, it's assumed they've raised this money before, what are the hurdles that they need to go through, and how far in advance can they do that? When I taught at Seminole High School, we used to take a trip every year to Busch Gardens with my math classes, and we'd map out different questions for them to follow through with while they were there. But, the approval process really wasn't that strict. If we were going to raise the money for the tickets and the buses, we basically weren't even asked about substitutes.
Right, well, and
There's
for
one
in-state
overnight.
opportunities, it is different. So this process, this request is in relation to out-of-state.
Out of state, I know, I
And-
get it, but there's still, I want to make sure that the teachers know the criteria and what they need to show, sort of a systematic way that they can go down a checklist to show. And the question is, how far in advance can they do that if they're not really sure, they say it's a new overnight trip. They're not really sure what money they can raise at that time.
Right, and typically what our policy provides is that they can't start fundraising until the trip is approved. So when, the problem is that we need to be assured that there's not going to be any cost before we approve it. And so that's the leniency that I'm asking for, is that the trips that are coming to you will typically come to you a year in advance.
Yes.
They may be coming much closer to the trip, because what I'll ask is that they demonstrate, for example, in their internal account, that they've already raised the funds to cover the cost of the planned trip,
Right?
and then that they provide that with their request. That essentially is what the students have said here has happened, that they have been fundraising for some time, and that it can be covered. So those are the details, I think, that I'm going to have to work out.
Raptor alert.
That's not good. But Member Davis, what that may mean for you all is that instead of getting, a request for an out-of-state, and remember, this is just out-of-state or international trip, it may be much closer to the window than what you're used to seeing.
Because, until they know how many students are going to go, or how far they got in some competition, or, how much things are going to cost next year. I mean, it's a little difficult to say, we're going to be able to raise this money. I mean, that's why I want to make sure that there's clear criteria, because I don't want one school saying, well, this didn't get approved, and then this school did, and why, and, it's an emotional thing for kids when they're planning to, succeed in a certain way in order to be able to experience, more in-depth learning, which is usually what occurs. And you can tell already, in all of those emails from the concerned parents that, oh, well, this team, they've got to go on the trip, or they're going on this trip, and that's why I need to make sure that it's very clear what they need to show, and by what date they need to show to be able to raise the money in time, because they're not supposed to raise money ahead of time. Now, I think what could have happened is teams can raise general funds, can't they?
Well, I think teams sometimes do, yes.
Right, and if
They
they
do.
raise general funds, they can say this may be for this or this or this or a field trip. As long as, my concern is that people who are donating money, they are clear at what this money is for. But I'm not sure, the legality of what you can say, this is general, that might be used for this. Because again, if they can't start fundraising until after it's approved, we really don't know what kind of fundraising they're going to be able to do.
Well, and that's what the policy says right now, which
That's
is
why it needs to be
part of the
revamped.
challenge.
Right.
But you're absolutely right that there are concerns when you're seeking donations for a particular purpose. And if you state that the donation is being sought for X purpose, and that purpose doesn't happen, that there are issues that could arise.
Right.
So it's something, Member Davis, we're going to have to work out, because at this point for next school year, we're going to need that assurance about the financial implications before I would feel that it was appropriately brought to you all for a decision, particularly because of the financial situation that we're in.
Yeah, and the general concern is, if you were a parent and you wanted to donate to, a baseball team, for example, and as you're donating, you think it's a general fund, it's going to benefit all of the kids for uniforms or equipment or whatever, and then 10 of the team make it to go on an out-of-state trip for some reason. But now all this money is going to 10 kids when the parents thought it was for the whole team.
Well, and
The whole team doesn't always go.
Well, and part of what the request would be was that all kids, notwithstanding whether they could individually afford to go, would
their
be
economic
covered.
Right. Well,
That's
that's
the
a-
information that I
Want
would
to
be
make sure
seeking.
everybody can.
That's a given, for sure.
Ms. Kraus, you had a,
Yes, just a follow-up. In our accounting, like the schools, they have a general fund. Is it listed per activity or per sport, or how do we delineate so that you would have the clear knowledge that, yes, this line item specifically says for Oviedo girls volleyball?
Well, for example, the Oviedo girls volleyball has an internal account that is strictly for the dollars that have been raised by the team.
And do all of our groups have that? Like, would DECA have that?
I don't know if all of the individual extracurricular groups would have, but certainly the athletic, the band,
All the
they do
boosters
have
do.
individual internal accounts. So,
Would that make a headache for you, Mr. Pavlicek? I think,
No, I
you know,
think
for
it would
our
actually make it
planning
easier.
purposes, because a general fund is a general, right, a general operating fund. I don't know if we think we can use that money for things we might, need, or the principal. I mean, I think the more clear that we are, or that the teams
Excuse
are.
me?
so Ms. Kraus,
Restrictions on what they can use it for, like this out-of-state trip?
Well, in the general fund, there are certain supplements for example, high school field trips. That is something that is under consideration for adjustment. There's line items that we are reviewing for consideration. But what we're talking about is for when individual teams, right, are looking to travel out of state, whether or not they can demonstrate as part of the request for an out-of-state, trip, that they have raised funds for, that would cover the cost of all of the team that would
Right.
be traveling in their account at the time of the request.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
okay, I just wanted to say, just based on my experience as a principal, pretty much every club has an internal account. Every sport, every club, and even clubs within clubs may have an internal account, because when they want to do something, they have to usually raise money or solicit donations. And so we can track the money that they collect for their trips or whatever.
That's what I was trying to.
Right,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you,
Ms. Garrick, you had one comment?
I did. In reviewing our policy, I did see that a field trip per policy, out-of-state field trips need to be approved by the board before any fundraising occurs. In this particular instance, that does not seem to be the case. And so, however, understanding just how important this is to these students and these families, and how important experiential learning is to all of our students, I want to be clear that I would like to recommend flexibility and for you to move forward with meeting with the coach and the principal or your designee, meeting with them and making sure that we can make this opportunity happen for students. So please keep us posted.
Absolutely. Now, I think unless there are any other questions on that part of the budget update, I will move to the capital part. We have a whole other section.
I know, we could talk about this all day, but I just want to make sure that it's not just for the volleyball team, but for
Okay.
any program and any club that's planning on any kind of trip and so on and so forth. But I believe that we should have, just as much discussion as a school board member on a deep dive and understanding for transparency, because our constituents need to understand, and we need to be able to communicate with them as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Yes, ma'am, we can go on to the next part of the budget discussion.
Okay, Mr. Pavlicek has reminded me that we do have a couple more slides before we move to the capital budget. So-
Right.
So the next, let's see, the next slide after this one. So this is just SCPS enrollment trends, just to update you on where we are going forward. So as you can see, the SCPS FTE historical is dropping over the last 3 years and going into the next year. So this is just the trend line going the wrong way, unfortunately. And then we have the scholarships going up each year, and their projection next year is 12,440 from 10,932, and a slight increase in the the charter schools. And then the next page is just the revenue that is projected for them for next year. This year, it's at 98,100,000 roughly. Next year, it's projected in the Senate budget to be 113.7 million. So just FYI, that's all we have.
So I would just like to clarify, Mr. Pavlicek, that those funds, the revenue holdback is a holdback. That money never comes to the district.
That is correct, but it is in our funding calculations, unfortunately.
It looks like it does,
We don't,
but
we
it
don't
doesn't.
get that, we do not receive that money, we never see it. It just shows up in our calculations.
Right, thank you for clarifying.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
I know that the Senate portion of this bill did have it separate and the House did not. Do they still have the opportunity to tack it onto an education bill as they have?
If they want to do that, but my understanding is the House did not accept what the Senate was proposing as far as splitting it, so anything's
No.
possible, but it doesn't seem like they want to do that.
Sure make our life better, I
It
think.
seems like they want to leave
That's
it
the word
together.
so far.
And there were no changes in the rules related to the scholarships either. The Senate had proposed rule changes that would limit the amount of time that they had to enroll for next year. Right now in law, it's November 15th. You can enroll for the next year. You have up until November 15th. The Senate tried to have language to change that. That was not accepted either. So nothing's changed as far as it goes right now.
Member Garrick?
I also wanted to get some more information. I know that with birth rates declining, that has also had an impact on our projections long-term. And Superintendent Beeman, I know that you had some specialty information through Dr.
Johnson.
Johnson. Is that something that you can either send us independently so that we can look at that?
As far as the demographic information that he shared specific to Seminole County?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You shared it with Cabinet, correct?
Yes.
I'd be curious
Yes.
to see what that looks like
Oh.
and how that's going to impact our growth or the opposite of growth. Decline.
Probably going to go into the next step that we're getting ready to talk to about as well, I'm assuming.
I was just going to comment, the United Way Alice project documents all that demographic data, and you can go online and look it up, at least maybe not in as great a detail as that report, but you can check it out.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good resource. I appreciate that, Dr. Dellinger.
Okay, and so we're
We're
turning
ready to
to
go.
the sales tax update with Dr. Mullins.
Good afternoon, board members. Appreciate the opportunity to provide you just an overview or update on our sales tax revenue generated capital projects. We are still in toward the tail end of projects with our Gen 3, what we call Gen 3 sales tax at sunset in December of 2025, but we do still have revenue available from that collection that we're putting towards the remaining 3 projects you see there. English Estates Elementary School, we're in the process of a significant remodel and HVAC upgrade, estimated to be completed next August. Lake Mary Elementary School, probably the most visible big project we have going on with the rebuilding of Lake Mary Elementary School, and that is projected to be complete next summer, August of 2027. Just for clarification, the new building will be complete and ready for students and teachers to move in by January of 27. The reason it says August is once we move into the new building, our teachers will move out of the existing building that they're keeping, Building 8, into some of the portables, and then we'll remodel or refresh that building. That'll be all complete by August of 2027. And then Lawton Elementary School, we are just finishing up a few punch-out items, if you will, on that campus, and we'll be complete, well before August of this summer. And that will bring a conclusion to our Gen 3 sales tax projects. But while we are working on those rather sizable projects, we have launched several other projects as a result of our community's favorable approval of the Gen 4 sales tax, 2025 to 35. It was about this time a year ago we began discussing with the board potential interest and opportunity in going out for a bond to bring in revenue to really jumpstart or forward fund these projects so that we could benefit our students, our staff, and certainly our community. And wanted to provide you an update on this. On these sales tax projects. So you see here, we have several projects already in project. Proud that we do have one completion already on the books. With the board's approval, we were able to go out immediately afterwards and purchase buses. And with some legislative state funding change, we saved several $100,000 by being able to get an advance purchase on those buses. So it's about 57 buses, if I remember correctly, were purchased, and they are on the road servicing our kids right now. But a lot of these other projects are in progress. The school-based security projects, the board is aware that there are several on the board agenda tonight for approval. We've also made a significant investment in the one-to-one device initiative for secondary schools. We've begun our investment on continued HVAC upgrades as well as roof replacements, along with athletic facility improvements. And then we have actively launched significant middle school renovation projects that you see listed down at the bottom, and we're also beginning the process or in the planning stage of doing some improvements at Winter Springs High School. Wanted to provide the board just a quick glimpse or reminder of what the projected sales tax revenue flow looks like for Gen 4. We are pretty much on pace since the sales tax was initiated in January of 26. We are preparing to make our first bond debt payment. And while our projected revenue is between 26 to 35 million a year, depending on, as it potentially increases over time, our debt payment for the bond is about $18.5 million. So there is a positive, obviously, net difference between the projected revenue and the debt service payment. So we are beginning to plan projects outside of the bond. We've prioritized the bond proceeds, the projects you've seen listed, but now we're beginning to identify and prioritize projects that could be funded with the surplus revenue above the annual bond payment that we have to make. Namely, right now, Winter Springs High School. We're beginning to tackle that campus in a phased approach because we won't have the full funding available for that whole project, but there are some critical infrastructure improvements that are needed there. So we're beginning a phased project. We've prioritized building envelope at Winter Springs High School. So beginning to plan, you can see in the third bullet there, beginning to plan projects with revenue exceeding debt service payment. That's what that's referring to. And we'll continue to identify those priority projects and certainly keep the board informed along the way. And with that, happy to answer any questions or.
Member Garrick, you have a question?
More a comment and a question. I wanted to say thank you again to Mr. Pavlicek and Dr. Mullins and your teams and all of the folks that did the deep dive into the bonds, that were able to make sure that we could take advantage of the market at the time, and the fact that it got us moving and put us in such a great place regarding our capital improvements is greatly appreciated. Super excited to see Sanford Middle starting underway. Just drive by it pretty often, so thank you so much. I did want to ask, glad that our fleet, the average age of our fleet has improved.
It has considerably, yes.
Yay.
We are very close to, we are approaching an average age of 10 years with our fleet, which is, we'd love for it to be below 10, and that we'd have all of our buses on warranty, but we're not quite there yet. We're
Yes.
11 point something years.
Yes, at one point they were about graduating high school. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
luckily we prefer those elementary school buses. Anyway, what I wanted to ask you is what's the percentage of our fleet thereabouts that's propane, given the rise in gas prices, obviously diesel prices. I know that this is top of everyone's mind in our personal budgets, and it's only amplified when you're looking at the quantity of vehicles that we drive. So our buses, and then are there any clean vehicles that the other departments use, or are they all traditional gas?
Our white fleet is traditional gasoline. With the some section, we have some diesel vehicles, but by and large, they are traditional diesel or gasoline fuel. We do not have any EV district white fleet vehicles.
Okay.
Buses, we are majority propane-powered buses. Propane is a more economical vehicle for us to use, cleaner in emissions as well. I couldn't tell you exactly what the percentage is. I will certainly let the board know, but what I do know is Seminole County is one of the leading districts in the state in use of propane buses. So that I do know.
Which is much cleaner and cost effective.
Correct.
Thank you.
I know it's well over half of our bus fleet, so, but I don't want to throw out a number until I double check.
It's all good. Thank you.
I'll go in order here. Member Krause.
Thank you. Dr. Mullins, thank you and your team for being forward-thinking along with Mr. Pavlicek. So the general public understands we have to have the money in hand before we begin many of these major projects. And this gave us an opportunity. How many 50th birthdays have we celebrated of our campuses this year? Our infrastructure is aging, so I'm just so grateful that you have a long-term vision and have directed your team so that we're not just putting Band-Aids on, that we are actually investing in the infrastructure. I have a question about the energy management or energy savings. Can you talk to that?
We currently have a contract with Train to help manage our energy consumption, provide us consulting services. They literally look at a vast majority of our campuses 24/7 to see how we're operating and how our equipment is running. We're actually in the process of doing a deep dive into our energy consumption to see if there aren't some additional efficiency opportunities. Already met with the superintendent to take a look at those. So we're hopeful that there are some opportunities even moving forward to take advantage of some energy conservation opportunities. But we are looking at it regularly to determine where we are exceeding our consumption expectations and making corrections and mitigating that, and our consultant is helping us do that. And then we're also celebrating those instances where we're exceeding the expectations in terms of consumption. As the board remembers, we've celebrated 5-star awarded schools with improved energy consumption, and we anticipate that there's some more coming here in the near future. So we're moving in the right direction.
I helped with voter registration at Haggerty High School in their auditorium, and it was like a meat locker. And there is apparently one wing in that school. I think I mentioned to you, you said your team was evaluating. One of the things, my first year on the board, over the summer, this was the year before COVID hit, so I'm not wishing any major 100-year viruses to happen. But one of the things that we did is have discussions like with our teachers that have mini fridges, clean them out, get them unplugged. Everything is unplugged. And so I'm sure Train will help guide us on best practices so that we can get the classrooms totally offline that are not being used.
Exactly, and we're taking a real ambitious look at our run times even for this summer to better coordinate when we are in our buildings for cleaning and so on. So, for example, our custodians can't clean the entire campus every day over the summer. So we are looking at, if you will, putting our buildings that aren't being cleaned in unoccupied mode, which reduces the load on the chillers and so on, saves us energy and that type of thing. So we're looking at that scheduling. Actually, I think I have a meeting with them again next week. So
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Member Davis.
I just had a quick question about the HVAC systems. I know that we're trying to upgrade them. I just went back and found all of the schools that we're looking at making those changes to. Is this just a portion of them that we're going to need to upgrade?
correct. These are the ones we identified that needed to be addressed immediately if we had additional funds to do so. We also budget for HVAC replacements and upgrades in our capital budget every year. It just hasn't been enough to keep up with the demand that we've had as equipment comes to the end of its life cycle. So this helps us catch up, if you will.
And all of these new systems and controls, they're going to assist with turning down the air on the weekends and all of that sort of stuff, right? It'll be automatically programmed in there?
Correct. It's called Building Automated Systems, the BAS element of HVAC. All of these systems will be on a BAS system that we can both see in our Maintenance Facility Services Center. We have technicians that sit and look at monitors throughout the day to understand where everything is operating. And basically, we can look into every classroom and every office in the district. But we also have a consultant who does that 24/7 for us.
Do instructors and staff have access to the controls, for example?
No, ma'am. We control that centrally.
All right. Thank you guys so much for all of your work. I know it takes an army to get a budget together like this, so I thank your teams as well. Thank you so much.
Ms. Sanchez?
First of all, thank you also. Please thank your teams. And I know we have been pivoting in so many different directions, and you guys have done a stellar job in making sure that we're as efficient as possible. I know when we were talking and discussing, the Gen 4 funds, and I had asked how many, I think we have 6 on our board book now that have not been approved yet. So anything that's in this board book, we haven't approved yet, including, the efficiency information that Vice Chair Garrick was sharing. But after 2027, how many schools do we have again? Was it about 20? You said that we still have front entrances that we still need to do, but we won't have Gen 4 money for that, correct?
I'll have to double check, but I
That's what you
believe that's
told me.
correct. We've been funding them out of the capital budget as we've been able to, and we'll continue to do that even beyond the sales tax money.
Okay, so we use from capital, all right. And then,
As
The-
well as the Safe Schools grant,
the Safe Schools Grant.
yeah,
All right.
hardening grant.
All right, perfect. And we also spoke about diesel, and I know diesel costs have gone up, but we get a special rate on diesel. Can you share that?
Yeah, we buy both our gasoline and our diesel as well as propane in bulk, so we get bulk pricing benefit. We don't pay what you and I pay at
Right.
the corner gas station, what you see on the corner. We get a considerable discount. I mean, it's still expensive. We
Right.
spend millions of dollars a year in fuel, but we do leverage our bulk buying opportunity.
Right, every bit helps, so any which way. And then, when I was in the classroom, I remember over the summer, actually even, they didn't even like it during the year, microwaves off. Some people have microwaves in between their pods and rooms and things like that. Computers were off, centered in the middle of their room for cleaning purposes as well, but also because of electrical storms and surges and so on and so forth. Are we still gonna, I mean, I know we still have another month before that, but I'm just asking if that's gonna be something we're gonna do again.
Yes, one of the emails our organization looks forward to receiving from me is the anticipation of summer shutdown. So
Right.
we remind all of our folks, we have checklists and so on. We anticipate and expect all ancillary or extra appliances, so on, to be unplugged and put away and that type of thing, so.
Fabulous. Again, please thank your teams and everybody. We appreciate y'all.
Okay, I would like to just comment on one thing. Recently, you provided a list for me when I attended a meeting related to improvements and things for the city of Castleberry. And that was really well received. They were like, oh, all of these things are happening in our schools. And so it got me thinking about the days when we had previous sales tax, when we actually put signs up and said, thank you, Seminole County. And so I was thinking that this is outstanding work that's happening, and these projects are outstanding, and I think, that's another way of being transparent with our taxpayers who contribute so generously to these things. So maybe think about a way to point it out, so when they drive by English Estates or Castleberry Elementary or whatever, they realize you helped make this happen. So it's just something that I thought about, especially in light of the fact that we have some folks who didn't even realize that some of these things were, accomplished from the benefit of their support. So anyway, just a comment. So I think we are to the end of our budget presentation. Ms. Beeman, did you need a follow-up? No.
No.
I wanted to request a 5-minute break before we
Good.
begin our strategic plan presentation.
Thank
So
you.
we'll reconvene in 5 minutes or so.